Kakadosh Boker Tov, Masechet Yevamot Daf Yomi 14a1. Says the Gemara, Mi Savra, did you actually think Shasu Bet Shammai Kedivrehem, that Bet Shammai did like what their words were, and therefore they went and they obligated Tzarat or Nibum or Chalitza? Lemaaseh lo asu Bet Shammai Kedivrehem. They did not do like their words, and therefore they accepted the words of Bet Hillel, that Tzarat is Keturah from Nibum and Chalitza. And therefore, everybody had the same minhag. So if everybody had the same minhag, there's no lo ta'aseh agudot agudot. There's no problem of lo titko to do. So Rabbi Yochanan says no, asu ve'asu. They did do like their words, and therefore that's why Rabbi Yochanan did have this concept of lo titko to do. That he was coming and telling, right, this concept to Resh Lakish about lo titko to do. Remember, lo titko to do means lo ta'aseh agudot agudot. Don't make yourselves like different paths or different groups. Okay, now this is where we're starting today. Ubeplukta de Rav Shmuel. So this machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Shakish was the same machloket of Rav and Shmuel. The Rav says lo asu Bet Shammai kedivrehem, that Bet Shammai did not do like their words, and Shmuel says asu right ve'asu, they did do like their words. Okay, so ask the Gemara 1 second. When exactly are we talking about the Bet Shammai did do like the words or they didn't do like the words? Eimat. When is this case? Yeah, says the Gemara. If this is going to be before the bat call, what was the bat call? What was the bat call? The what? That the halacha is like the halacha is like Bet Hillel. If you remember, there's a Gemara. The Gemara says that the bat call came out from Shemaim and said that we paskin like Bet Hillel. So says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me now that this is before the bat call, so my tama demandama lo asu. So what does it mean, right, that they didn't do it like them? Meaning, if there was no bat call yet, that the halacha is like Bet Hillel, why is Bet Shammai not going to do like their own shita? For sure they should do like their own shita. Ve'ela, but rather, it has to be after the bat call. So then what's the mandamar then that says that they did like Bet Shammai? Meaning, if there was already a bat call that came out and said that everyone has to do like Bet Hillel, so then why is it that Bet Shammai are doing like their own shita? They have to go like Bet Hillel. So answers the Gemara, either we could answer up that it's before the bat call or after the bat call. What does that mean? Let's explain. If you want, you can answer it's before the bat call. The Bet Hillel ruba. The Bet Hillel was the rov. So leman da'amar lo asu. So according to the man da'amar that they didn't do like their words. Bet Hillel ruba. Because they are the rov, they're the majority. So you go like the majority, which means even before the bat kol, if you have majority like the Bet Hillel, so you go like the majority. However, though, according to the Manda Amar Asu, ki azlina bataruba, when do we go bataruba? Echad dechiyadad eninu, when both sides are equal. Hacha Bet Shammai bechad detfe, but here Bet Shammai are more chad, they're more sharp, which means like this. Here, when do you go like majority? You go like majority when you have the people on the same level, and then you have the majority go one way, minority go like the other way. But what happens if you have the majority saying one thing, but the minority are much sharper? They're much smarter, right? So therefore there, maybe I don't like majority. So therefore he's coming and saying, even if you're going to tell me it's before the bat kol and Bet Hillel are still a rov, so according to the Manda Amar that they didn't do like their words, you have the rov. But according to the Manda Amar that they did do like their words, he says, what do I care about the rov if they're stronger, right? They're stronger in wisdom, right? They're more sharper. So because of that, that's why they did like their words and they didn't do like Bet Hillel. The Baitema, if you want, you can answer La'achar Bat Kol. We're talking about after the Bat Kol. Manda Amar Lo Asu, according to the Manda Amar that they didn't do it, right? Lo Asu, then after Bat Kol, the Bat Kol came out. Manda Amar, according to the Manda Amar, Asu, that they did do like their own words. Rabbi Yoshua, it's Rabbi Yoshua. Te Amar, because says Rabbi Yoshua, en mashkichim bebat kol. Okay? We do not pay attention to a bat kol. So the fact that we don't pay attention to a bat kol, that's why, right, we come and that means even after the bat kol, you could still say that Bet Shammai did like their own words because we don't pay attention to a bat kol. Okay? So now it says the Gemara, 1 second. Umanda marasu. But according to the mandamar that they did do like their own words, karinan kan, so then at least here it should be lo titgodedu lo tasu agudot agudot. You're not allowed to make yourselves agudot agudot, right? And this is how we started the Gemara, if you remember. That's what's going on here. We're making like different groups among Sam Yisrael. So Abaye comes and he answers, Ki aminan, when do we say that there's an isur of lo titgodedu? Kegon shte batidinim bi'irachat. If you have two bedins in the same city. If you have two bedins in the same city, and then halalu morinka divrei bet Shammai, some of them are paskin in the bet Shammai, and the other bedin are going to paskin in the bet Hillel, so then it's going to be a problem. But two batei dinim in two different cities, let lamba, there's no problem. Why? Because that means everyone is either going like bet Shammai or like bet Hillel, but they're in different cities, so it's okay. So there's no lotis go to do agudot agudot. So Amale Rava comes and he asks against the Baye, bet Shammai or bet Hillel kishte batei dinim birachadami. It's considered like two batei dinim in the same city, right? Which means that even though the two tzadim tried not to paskin in the same city like that, but still minastam, you're always going to have people bet Shammai and bet Hillel in the same city, and then you have a problem of lo tidgo to do. So Elama Rava, but rather Rava retracts and says, Ki amnina lo tidgo to do. When do we say lo tidgo to do? Ki gon betin beirachat, betin in the same city. Plag morin could give bet Shammai, half the betin go like bet Shammai and half go like bet Hillel. Plag morin could give bet Hillel. But even if you're going to have two betins in the same city, let lamba. Okay, we do not have a problem. So that means according to this, it's coming out that even in the same city, as long as you have two batedinim, and one is pasking like bet Hillel and one is pasking like bet Shammai, there's no problem of lotit kodedu. Now we're going to try to bring a proof against Resh Lakish. Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof. In Komoshe Rabbi Eliezer, hayu kortim etzim la'asot pechamim b'Shabbat la'asot barzel. Right? In the place of Rabbi Eliezer, they used to cut wood, right? In order to make a fire on Shabbat, in order to heat up the metal for the sakin, for the knife of the Brit Milah. In Komoshe Rabbi Yosef Galilei, in the city of Rabbi Yosef Galilei, he used to eat chicken and milk together. Why? Because according to them, each one of these were permitted. So now says the Gemara, in the place of Rabbi Eliezer, yes, it was permitted. In Komol Shel Rabbi Akiva, no. Place of Rabbi Akiva, no. Because remember, the Tanna was learned in the Mishnah. Klal Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said, "Kol melacha she'efshar la'asotam en Shabbat en dochet Shabbat." Anything which is called machshireh mitzvah, which means that you could have done it before the Shabbat, does not push off the Shabbat. So now, 1 second, it comes out that some of the people are going to be doing the heter like Rabbi Eliezer, and other people are going to be doing the isur like Rabbi Akiva. So why don't we say lo titko to do? Yeah, one more time. You have machloket Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer, and the same thing is going to happen with Rabbi Yosef Galilei. So according to Rabbi Yosef Galilei, there's no problem of chicken and milk; it's only meat and milk. Okay, so right, it's all the Rabbanan, but according to Rabbi Yosef Galilei, it's mutar legamre. So now the question is the question is like this. The question now is that you have a case here where you have two rabbis arguing, and now they're going to be, one of them is going to be, people are going to be Michalel Shabbat because they're doing Machshireh Milah on Shabbat, and other people, they're not going to be doing it. So now why are you going to tell me that? Now, so says the Gemara, by my tiyufta, what's the question exactly? I thought he says Bimkomo. Bimkomo just means in different places. We just said that if it was in different places, right, there's no problem. Because as long as you have like the city of one rabbi, the city of the other rabbi, so then there's no problem. So the Gemara says, fine. So what do you think of Hamid? Meaning when you ask the question, so what was the question? So he says, no. I would have thought to say, Nishum, right, Chumrad Shabbat, Kemakom Echadam. Kamashmalanda, we don't say that. Meaning like this. I would have thought to say Shabbat is so strict that even if it's going to be like two different places, I consider it like one place. And we said in one place, you're not allowed to do that. So therefore he says, Kamashmalan, that even though it's Isur Shabbat, there's no Isur to go to do in different places. So you could have different cities. One city will have a minhag like Rabbi Eliezer. They're going to be cutting wood on Shabbat to heat up in order to purify, to sterilize the knife of the Brit Milah. And another one will be doing like Rabbi Akiva, that it's a mamash, it's like Mechalel Shabbat, right? And there's no problem with it. There's the Gemara. Okay? Tashema, we have another writer. That Rabbi Yavu, When Rabbi Yavu used to go to the city of Rabbi Shua Levi, have a metaltel shraga. He used to come and he used to carry a candle after it turned off on Shabbat. When he used to go to the city of Rabbi Yochanan, he would not come, right, and be metaltel this candle after it turned off. So now, why don't we say, right? Why don't we say also there's a problem of Lot is going to do? So the Gemara is going to answer the exact things that we said before. What's the question? You just told me it's different cities. There's the city of Rabbi Yochanan and the city of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. What's the problem? So he says, no. This was our question. How would Rabbi Yavu himself do that? Meaning, if Rabbi Yavu held that it's a sur, what? He's going to one city, now it's a sur. Going to the other city, now it's mutar. Like Iowa, what's going on? It's either a sur or it's mutar. Yes. So he says, no, Rabbi Yavu, he held like Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, the bemer it's mutar. But when he used to go to the city of Rabbi Yochanan, Mikla, Le'atzred, Rabbi Yochanan, Lo avi mitaltel mishut kod Rabbi Yochanan. Because of the kavod of Rabbi Yochanan, he wouldn't do it. But really, Be'emet, he held that it was mutar. So ask the Gemara, Va'ika Shama. Yeah, but you have the Shamash. Remember that all the Gdolim, they used to have a Shamash. And the Shamash, if he didn't say anything to the Shamash would now come and he would carry the thing. Now, Rabbi Yochanan is going to see that that the Shamash is carrying the candle. He's going to go wild at him. He's going to say, what's going on? And then he's going to realize that the Biavu, he doesn't pass like him. So answers the Gemara, the model l'shama. No, he told the Shamash. So I mean, since he told the Shamash, don't worry about it. Yeah, why? Because he would never come to Rabbi Yochanan of the mistake. So we're going to have another question now. Tashema, ya afal pi she'elu osrim ve'elu matirim, even though Bet Hillel are the ones which are osrim, tzara terva fiyubum, and Bet Shammai are matirim, lo nimnu Bet Shammai v'nisan nashim Bet Hillel v'lo Bet Hillel. They wouldn't stop themselves from getting married to each other. That means they would intermarry within themselves. So the question is, Yama Bishama lo asu. If you're going to tell me that Bet Shammai did not do like their halacha, so Mishum Hachinam knew, so it makes sense why they wouldn't stop getting married within each other. But if you're going to tell me now asu, that they did do like their words, Amailo knew, why didn't Bet Hillel stop themselves from getting married to Bet Shammai? Bishama Bet Shammai Bet Hillel knew. I understand Bet Shammai from Bet Hillel they didn't stop. Because even according to Bet Shammai, the women of Bet Hillel are only going to be women which are prohibited on their husbands with a lav, right? With a lav means a negative commandment. That maybe they should have done ibum, or maybe they should have done how do you call it, chalitza, and they didn't do it. So now there's a lav, and now somebody gets married to them. They are over on a lav, but there's no mamzerim. There's bnei lavin. Okay, therefore there's no mamzerut. But according to Bet Hillel, to Bet Shammai, why didn't they stop themselves? Why? According to Bet Hillel, Sarat Yavam is a Nisur Karet. So therefore, Bnei Chayve Klitut Minu, the Mamzerim him. Now remember, if somebody goes with a woman that he's Chayav Karet to go with her, the child is a Mamzer. So therefore, I understand that Bet Shammai didn't stop themselves from going with Bet Hillel. It makes sense. There's no Mamzerut problems. So okay, so they continue getting married to Bet Hillel, according to their Shita. But why doesn't Bet Hillel stop themselves from getting married to Bet Shammai? According to them, the children are mamzerim, so they should have stopped themselves. Now, v'chitim, and if you're going to tell me, kasavre Bet Hillel der mamzer mechayve klitut, maybe held Bet Hillel holds that there's no mamzer from chayve klitut, right? So he says, v'amar Rabbi Lazar, afa pi shedechulku Bet Shammai Bet Hillel betzarot, modim shemamzer minish yisuro yisur bava nushtaret. He says, even if you're going to tell me now that it says Rabbi Lazar, that even though Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai are going to argue on Sarat Erva if they do Yibum or not, everybody agrees that there's only going to be Mamzer from an Isur Erva and Anush Karet. So therefore there is a Karet. So therefore we could bring a proof from here that they didn't do according to the Shita. Meaning the fact that Bet Hillel are still able to get married to Bet Shammai, that's the biggest proof that what? That Bet Shammai did not do like their words. Because if they did like their words, the children would have been like Mamzerim. If the children would have, Bet Hillel would have never got married to them. So answers the Gemara, lo, it's not true. Leolam asu, they did do like the words. But they would tell Bet Hillel, and then the people of Bet Hillel would separate themselves. Meaning like this: Bet Shammai did do like the words, and the Tzarat Yabam they did do either Yibum or Chalitza. Now, if they do Yibum, according to Bet Hillel, the children are not Mamzerim because that's Tzarat Erva, and it's a problem of Mamzerut. But the people of Bet Shammai would tell the families of Bet Hillel family A, B, C are the ones that they have problems of mamzerut according to your shita, because there was sarat yabam, and therefore the families of Bet Hillel would segregate themselves from those families A, B, C. Every other family there was no problem. So therefore Bet Shammai would tell Bet Hillel, be careful with these families. And therefore, right, they already know who they're permitted to get married to and who they're. And it's also logical to say such a thing. The Tani Seifa, as we saw the end of the Mishnah, all the tarot and tumot that they were mitayim mitameh, they also used to do the same thing. Why would they do the same thing? Which means they would come and they would borrow and they would lend and everything. Yudala the Mubet, 14b. So now says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me that they told them, so right? Because that they didn't stop doing tarot and tumot and everything. Why? Because they always told each other. Which means that even though maybe Bet Hillel said it was tameh and Bet Shammai said tarot, or vice versa, since they would always inform each other of what their shita was, so therefore it would always be okay. But if you're going to tell me they didn't tell each other, Bishama Bet Hillel, right? Sorry, Bishama Bet Shammai Bet Hillel. I understand Bishama Bet Shammai that they didn't stop themselves from Bet Hillel. The tumot of Bet Hillel, Bet Shammai taron minu, because the tumot of Bet Hillel for Bet Shammai are tahor. But Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, why didn't they stop themselves? Tarot of Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, they're tumot. And allowed the modelu shramina, but rather they had to come and they told them. So says the Gemara, fine. Why are you bringing me the proof from the borrowing of utensils from Tum'ah stronger than the proof of getting married? Meaning we had two cases. We had the cases of marriage, and we had the cases of borrowing utensils, kelim, and everything of Tum'ah v'tara. Why is it that Tum'ah v'tara is a bigger proof than the marriage? So says the Gemara, I would have thought to say, Sarah kala itla, which means that to do with Sarah, there's a kol. Everybody knows about it. Meaning that when somebody dies without children, and then the wife and the Sarah and everything, they have to start doing ibum and chalitza and all these things, people hear about these things. Like why? It makes a loud voice, because it's not common, right? And it's sad, and everybody, so therefore people talk about it. So I would have thought to say that in such a case, they did not need to mention it whatsoever, because it already has a voice. Everyone's speaking about it. Kamash Malan comes teach you, but they still used to ask each other. And that's why we needed both cases to teach you that we would still ask, right, from Bet Shammai, or the families of Tzarat Yabam, right, that the Tzarat is, the Yisur Yabam, right, Tzarat Elva, that they did do Yibum and so on and so forth, and therefore they would segregate themselves from there. Now the Gemara is going to go back to what we mentioned before. Gufa Amar Bilazar, says Bilazar. Yeah, even though there's a machlok between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel to do with the tzarot, modin, everyone agrees that there's no mamzer unless it's yisura or yisirva, ve'anush karet. Man modin, who's the one that says modin? Il eva Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. If you're going to tell me Bet Shammai, they agree to Bet Hillel, obviously. B'nei chayavin lavin kshinim minu, right? Obviously, b'nei chayavin lavin, according to everybody, is going to be kasher. But Bet Hillel to Bet Shammai, he gufa chayve kritut. That is chayve kritut. So says no. Really, it's Bet Shammai to Bet Hillel, and it's Apuka de Rabbi Akiva. It's the exclude Rabbi Akiva. Ta'amar, but according to Rabbi Akiva, he says in a Mishnah later on, Yesh mamzer mechayve lav. Shitat Rabbi Akiva, which we don't pass like this, but it's very strong shita. Even from a lav, there's going to be karet. There's going to be mamzerut. Meaning, even from chayve lavin, there's a problem of mamzerut. That is the shita of Rabbi Akiva. But we don't pass that. That was the chidush, that we do not have mamzerut from chayve lavin, only from chayve kritut. So Tashema, we're going to bring now another proof. Afal pi shenechlatu Bet Shammai Bet Hillel betzarot uvachayot beget yashan uvsafek eshet ish uvemegaresh et ishto velana imo bepunda bekesef uvshave kesef bepruta uvshave pruta lo nimneu Bet Shammai melitzar neshim Bet Hillel lo Bet Hillel Bet Shammai. Here, this is very interesting. There's a Braita. The Braita says that even though there's machlokot between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel to do with, number one, tzarot, that was our Mishnah, that there was a machloket, tzarat erva, does she do chalitza yibum? Number two, ba'achayot. What is achayot? If you look, the Mishnah later on, Kavav Amud Aleph says, right, that if you have a case of 4 brothers and 2 of them getting married to 2 sisters. Yeah, so one more time, 4 brothers, 2 brothers getting married to 2 sisters. Right? And those 2 brothers that are married to the 2 sisters died. So the other 2 brothers are not allowed to do Yibum to the sisters. They have to do Chalitza. Now, if they were over on the Yisur and they did Yibum, Bet Shammai says they're allowed to stay married to them. And Bet Hillel says they have to divorce them. So therefore, that means Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, they argue to do with Achayot, to do with sisters. Okay? Next case, Get Yashan. What is a Get Yashan? The Mishnah Gitin, Ayin Tet Amubet says, Get Yashan is a person writes to get his wife, and afterwards he has yichud with her before giving her the get. So Bet Shammai comes in and says, you're still allowed to divorce with this get. But Hillel says it's considered an old get. Why is it old? Because after he wrote it, he was supposed to give it. Instead of giving it to him, giving it to her, he had yichud with her. So therefore, what happens? It's called Get Yashan. You're not allowed to get married to her. This is an Yisud Rabbanan, and the reason is to explain over there, right, what's happening. So therefore, if a person already went and he if he already gave the get, so then it says you don't need another get, even according to Bet Hillel, right? But you're not allowed to get married the Chatchila like this or whatever it is, right? Okay, fine, but that's all in Masechet Gitin. The next is Safek Eshetish. What's Safek Eshetish? Imagine right now a person is on his deathbed, and he writes a get to his wife, and he tells her, right, that the get is going to be from today if he dies from this machala, if he dies from this sickness.
At night.
Yeah, he made a condition. Now what happens is that he gives her the get. Yeah, that's what they used to do when they used to go to war. So now what happens is like this. During this entire time frame that he's still on his deathbed, she's a Safek Eshetish. Why is she a Safek Eshetish? Because if he now dies from this sickness, she was already divorced, Lemafreya, retracted. Now if he doesn't die from the sickness, she's not. So that's called the Safek Eshetish. Okay? It's the next case was Lana Imo Bepundak. What does it mean, Lana Imo Bepundak? Imagine right now a person comes and he gives his wife a get. And after giving his wife a get, they have yichud. He sleeps with her in an inn. Yeah? So what happens? He has to have another get, according to Bet Hillel. Right? Why? We suspect that again, that he did another kiddushin with Biyah, and therefore he needs another get. According to Bet Shammai, no, we don't suspect that. Next, according to Bet Shammai, the shiur of kesef katan that a person could be do kiddushin is dinar kesef or chefetz, like an object, which is shaveh dinar kesef. According to Bet Hillel, it's enough with a pruta. You don't need shaveh kesef or dinar kesef. It's even a pruta, much smaller amount. So that's another machlok between them. Lo nimneu, that means even though we had all these machlokot between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, lo nimneu, Bet Shammai or Bet Hillel, right? Milisa Bet Shammai Bet Hillel, and lo Bet Hillel, Bet Shammai. That means nobody to teach you shechiba v'reut neogim.
That's exactly because
they had chiba ve'avad. That means they had love between them. That means not because they had a machloket in halacha, is that I don't have nothing to do with you, you have nothing to do with me. No. They used to get married between themselves. To actually fulfill that which they learned. Yeah, they do what? So he says, right, that they love the peace and the truth. Rabbi Shimon says, so now comes Rabbi Shimon and says, no, they used to stop from a vadai, but they wouldn't stop from a safek, which means if there was a woman that she for sure was asura, they wouldn't get married to her. But if it was only a safek asura, they would get married to her. So now we're going to go into that which Rabbi Shimon says. If you're going to tell me that they did like their words, because of that, Bet Hillel, they didn't get married to Bet Shammai. But if you're going to tell me Shelo Asu, so Amai Nimnu, so then why did they stop themselves? Meaning, if you're going to tell me that Bet Shammai never actually did like their words, that means when they argued like Bet Hillel, they still went like Bet Hillel lechumra. So therefore, why is it that over here they would stop themselves from getting married if it never existed? So says the Gemara, Betizbira. Can you actually say it's logical? Even if you're going to say that they did do it, I understand that Bet Hillel are going to stop from Bet Shammai because Chayvei Kritut was it's Chayvei Kritut. V'mamzerim le Bet Hillel, they're considered mamzerim for Bet Hillel. But according to Bet Shammai to Bet Hillel, my name no Bet Hillel. It's v'nei Chayvei Lavin, they're still kasher. So says the Gemara, no, you know why they stopped? The tzara herself, hachana misotu here lo nitzrecha ella la tzara atzma. We're talking about that nimneu Bet Shammai to get married to the tzara herself if she didn't accept chalitza min yibum. And therefore, since the Braita is answered, so then we could say from Rabbi Shimon, the Bet Shammai, they did do like the words. What does that mean that we're talking about now from the Tzara? He says, why is it that according to Rabbi Shimon, we said that they didn't want to get married to the Vadai, but they were going to get married to the Safek? What's the difference? So he says, Lo tema mina Safek, don't say it's a Safek. Ela ema mina stam. What does it mean, mistam? Temodi lehu farshe. So they used to come and they used to tell them, right? And then these, again, remember, that means Bet Shammai would inform Bet Hillel, who are the people that they did go and they did do this problem of Tzarat Erva. According to Bet Hillel, it would be a problem of Mamzerut, and therefore they would tell them about it. So says the Gemara, so what's it going to teach you? That there was love between them? That means Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, they would get married between themselves because there was so much love between them. Hainu that's a Reisha. So Kamash Malan comes to teach you the Kula Rabbi Shimon. The entire Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon. And therefore, when we said the entire concept that there was Ava and Reut between everybody, it was true. Also, the Reisha taught you that, and also the Teva taught you that. And that's why they used to get married between each other. Which means that what teaches you the biggest part of the love. That means even though they would argue on every single halakha that there was in the book, yeah, they loved each other so much they would still get married between each other. Why? Because there's nothing to do with something personal. It has to do with halakha. Okay, so I hold this, you hold that, no problem. But my child is going to get married to your child. What's the problem? There's no problem. Opposite. So Tashema, we're going to now bring another proof, right? To bring a proof that Bet Shammai, they did do look their words. The Amar of Yochanan Menuri says of Yochanan Menuri, how did the halakha come out amongst Bnei Israel? Naasa k'divrei Bet Shammai, if they did like Bet Shammai, havlan mamzer l'divrei Bet Hillel. The child is going to be a mamzer for Bet Hillel. Naasa k'divrei Bet Hillel, and if they did like Bet Hillel, havlad pagum l'divrei Bet Shammai. The child is going to be pagum for Bet Shammai. What does that mean? If right now they did not do chalitza, right? Remember, according to Bet Hillel, tzarat erva, tura from everything, from ibum and chalitza. According to Bet Shammai, they would have to do ibum and chalitza. So now, if according to Bet Shammai they did do the ibum, a child is a mamzer because it was tzarat erva for Bet Hillel. According to Bet Hillel, though, what happens now? She was tura from anything, and now according to Bet Shammai, what's halacha? Right? The children are halalim. Why? If there was no chalitza, and now he got married to a kohen, right? So therefore, the child is a halal, right? You know what a halal is? A kohen that he gets married to a grusha or chalutza, right? So that means a kohen that gets married to a divorced woman or a chalutza. So now the child becomes a halal or a halala if it's a girl, which means that they lose their rights for kohen, for kehuna. Which means that, for example, they do not receive Trumot Masrot, they wouldn't get up the Aliyah for the Kohen, all these things. So it says the blood is pagum for Bet Shammai. So he says, why don't we come and we're going to be mitaken laim tzarot? We should make a shiuchol tzor. So just do chalitza and not ibum. So answers the Gemara, they didn't have enough time to do it, which means they wanted to come and they wanted to make a certain establishment. You know what? Always obligate chalitza. If you always obligate chalitza, you're good according to everybody. You're good because there would never be mamzeri, right? Because you did chalitza, and you're good. That means for that fixes Bet Hillel, and it fixes Bet Shammai because if you always do chalitza, they won't go to the kohen, and then there won't be halalim. So you fixed everything. So says the Gemara, they wanted to, but they didn't have time until all of a sudden it just left. Sometimes there has to be a time when you're able to make an establishment, and if you lose that moment, you lost it. Chavad. So that's why it's so important. We continue with Hashem tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.